here on the new Sentinel Sports page, brought to you by Image Matters. Let's talk about the impact in recruiting of Tennessee's new head football coach and the new staff we bring in from 247Sports.com, fast-growing, taking over the world, I think, well on their way. The National Recruiting Director for 247 Sports, J.C. Shurburtt, joins us. J.C., Vincent, Jesse, how you doing, J.C.?
Hey, it's great to be with you guys again.
Great to have you on with us. Hope you're doing well. And let's talk about this Butch Jones hire. When you first heard about this hire, what was your first reaction?
Well, I sort of felt like, some of the underwhelming opinions out there were a little unjustified. I mean, this guy's been a winner at every level. Cincinnati, of course, was in pretty good shape under Brian Kelly and before that under Mark D'Antonio. But you still have to go out and recruit guys to what basically is a commuter school in a northern city and get enough athletes to compete in the Big East. And I think that he did that. And that was proven. He was able to go out and evaluate. They were able to go out and recruit out of state, especially in the state of Florida. So you look at kind of what the Tennessee program needs, and I'm not so sure they didn't hit a home run as far as, the fit for the job. And unlike some other schools, it's important for Tennessee to get the right guy. You have to have a guy that can go recruit and get players because, right now you're looking at 3 winning seasons in 8, 4 bowl trips in 8. That's a long time for that program to be down. And if you have to go sell Tennessee to an out-of-state player, which the Vols have to do to compete at the highest level in the SEC, that can get really tough unless you have a guy that knows how to get talent and get it done. So I think that, all in all, it's probably a lot better hire than some people are giving it credit for.
Visiting with J.C. Shurburtt, who's the National Recruiting Director for 247 Sports. J.C., out of the new hires in the SEC, who do you think hired the best recruiter?
Well, I would probably have to say Tennessee did. I think that, there's a lot of talk about Malzahn, and Malzahn was really good at going and locking in on 2 or 3 guys and building a good relationship with them when he was at Auburn. But we all know that, Trooper Taylor and Curtis Looper and those guys were really the closers on that staff. And Gus Malzahn, coached high school football 3 or 4 years ago. You look at Brett Bielema, I think he's a great fit at Arkansas as far as recruiting goes because really recruiting to Wisconsin to compete in the Big Ten is similar to recruiting to Arkansas in the SEC. They're similar types of programs. Mark Stoops is unproven, but I'm sure he'll do a fantastic job at Kentucky. So you look at the 4 hires, and certainly Butch Jones is the most proven one. And like I said, Cincinnati is a good program. It's been good for a while, but it's not the easiest place in the world to recruit to, and he did a good job there doing it.
What have been the early returns in feedback to Butch Jones and this new Tennessee staff of prospects?
I think there's some excitement, and I think that, just from what I've heard, that they like talking to Coach Jones. They think he's a personable guy. From what I've heard about players that were recruited by him at Cincinnati, that's the one thing that stands out. He's just a real positive person. And sometimes that sort of rubs off on you. And when you're Tennessee and you've been struggling, you've been down for a while, just getting some positive energy in there and getting sort of a can-do attitude can do you a world of good. We all know that. So I think that with regards to that, it's been overwhelmingly positive so far. But most new hires are, and we'll see what happens as we move forward.
JC, when Butch Jones first completed his staff, I looked at what the offers were for Cincinnati with Butch Jones and his staff there compared to what Tennessee his staff had previously offered. And there were more than 50 prospects that were offered by both. Is that somewhere when fans are looking for potential prospects now to be in the mix of Tennessee, is that an area to maybe look as guys that Butch Jones offered or not necessarily?
Well, I mean, I think some probably. You could look at, you look up and down the target list, and certainly there's some players Cincinnati offered early that they probably couldn't get to once the SEC schools came in, and then there's probably some players that Cincinnati offered that they were hoping that the SEC schools wouldn't come in on. And it was just kind of a secret. So that second group, those evaluation guys, I certainly can see Tennessee as they go down the stretch trying to fill spots, maybe circling back on some of those. It looks like Tommy Tuberville is going to kind of go in a different direction with his recruiting up there. They got commitments from 3 prep school guys this weekend. So there could be some opportunities there with a kid that, may have been leaning towards committing to Cincinnati, but who's good enough to play at Tennessee and Southeastern Conference, and, the Vols end up snatching him up.
Von Bell is a prospect that fans have talked about quite a bit, 5-star, one of the top prospects in the country. The 247Sports, certainly down near that Chattanooga area. What do you think the impact could potentially be for Von Bell in Tennessee?
I think it's all about the Vols' new coaching staff building a relationship with him as quickly as possible. His other 2 suitors certainly are not new to the recruiting game in Alabama and Ohio State. So Tennessee's got a lot of ground to make up, but I'm not saying that they can't get it done, though. I think that Tennessee's probably always had a special place in Von Bell's heart, and certainly it's probably not going to be as hard of a sell for the Vols as maybe it would be another school coming in that had to start over building that relationship. But I wouldn't say right now that I think Tennessee will get Von Bell. But I certainly wouldn't rule it out, and I think that we'll see what happens moving forward, and it will definitely be a storyline to watch. I think if Tennessee can find a way to get him, it would be absolutely huge.
What about Derek Green? Do you have a sense of what Derek Green might do, and how much is Tennessee in the mix for him?
Absolutely not. I think Derek Green is one of the most enigmatic prospects in the country. It's interesting that some folks have him rated so highly, and then there's multiple schools that have backed off, so that's confusing. It looked like he was headed to Michigan, and then he wants to take visits, and then he said he wanted to play in a pro-style offense, and now he's visiting Oregon. Chances are this kid is a pain to cover in recruiting, or who kind of keeps us guessing in recruiting, will go somewhere and win the Heisman Trophy. But it's one of those things where you just don't know what's going to happen day in and day out with him. If I had to guess, I would say Michigan, but I certainly think that with the new staff at Tennessee and the fact that Jay Graham is still there, I think that that's a possibility. And I think Coach Graham's one of the best recruiters in the country, and probably one of the best assistant coaches in the country. So I certainly believe that, with him being retained, that anything is possible with regards to running back recruiting, and that includes landing Derek Green.
Tennessee has offered a lot of prospects. This isn't a new concept for them, but the wide receiver position is one where they had offered 40-plus guys. I mean, they're really in the mix for a lot of different guys. Does that sound like a high number for you from one school, that number of offers for one position?
Not really. There's a lot of receivers in Tennessee's, I guess, recruiting footprint throughout the South, and there's a lot of receivers really everywhere. So I think that when you look at our rankings, I think we have something like 300 receivers ranked. So it's a position that there's plenty of prospects at. So I guess with the need there, I mean, you look sort of at the older guys. You lost Derek Rogers. No telling what Justin Hunter and Cordero Patterson will do. So that was a need. So I think whenever you have a need, you got to cast a wide net. So no, it didn't really surprise me a whole lot, considering the nature of the position and the need there at Tennessee.
And 247Sports had a story, I guess over the weekend, there were some reports that 4-star offensive guard Reef Kolar had committed to Kansas, but he I guess, has told 247Sports that he's not committed anywhere. You guys have him as a number 159 prospect, number 9 overall offensive guard. Zach Fulton announcing this morning that he is staying at Tennessee, as is Jawan James. So the offensive line is in good shape. How important would it be to get that level of guy on the offensive line, whether it's Kolar or maybe someone else? Because Tennessee didn't bring in any offensive linemen last year.
Yeah, I mean, I think Kolar's probably a pretty big target if you look at it. He's one of the best guards in the country. All the way in Hawaii. But, if there's one SEC school that's done okay recruiting Hawaii, it's definitely Tennessee. So I think it's not that there's not precedent. I think at this point, Kolar's probably leaning to Kansas pretty strongly just because the information that generated the report. I mean, these reports don't just come out because Joe Bob down at the corner said he heard he committed. I mean, they come from legitimate sources, and I don't think we were the first to report it. I think other people were, and certainly have great respect for their sources and all that. So I think that right now, if you're reading the tea leaves on him, strong lean to Kansas, but we're hitting the dead period right now. The new staff will regroup. They'll go out. One lucky guy or two lucky guys will get to fly down there and visit him in Hawaii. And I think at that point, Tennessee can see where they stand. And I wouldn't be surprised if, the Vols weren't that other school strongly in the mix with Kansas.
Speaking of Hawaii, Colton Goas had just decommitted from Tennessee in the staff. And there's been a couple that have decommitted recently from Tennessee since Butch Jones and the staff came on board. Fans see that, and I think sometimes there's a big reaction to that. What would you say to fans when they see with this new coaching staff, they see some decommits and think, oh, look how far we're dropping in the team rankings?
Yeah, I wouldn't worry about it because if you look at it, Tennessee's been ranked pretty highly in recruiting, at least top 20. It's not like it used to be, but at least top 20. And, it's pretty clear that the roster across the board is not up to standard. I mean, it's clear that they're not the players at Tennessee that there once were. So I wouldn't worry about losing a few because, maybe some of those guys aren't guys that the new staff likes or aren't guys that the new staff will miss, and there's a reason you have a new staff. So it's one of those things where I would always encourage all fans to wait and see how it turns out on signing day, evaluate it then for what it is, and then evaluate the class once they get to campus and once they start playing football, along down the road as far as how these prospects turn out, because you just never know. You never know. And I don't see, even with the decommits, I don't see anybody Tennessee, in my opinion, will miss at this point.
Who are, we had a off-air online question, who are some 4- and 5-star prospects that you think now Tennessee might be in the mix for with this new staff that maybe they were not before? Any guys come to mind?
Well, I think you got to go back to Von Bell and the fact that, during the end of the Dooley era, I think that it was a situation where I don't think he was all that interested at all with what was going on. I think Marquez North, the old staff, did a good job of positioning Tennessee with them, and I think now he's warmed up even more to the Vols. He's a 4-star receiver out of Charlotte, early enroll guy, so the clock is ticking on him. And I'd also, look out for a guy like Montravius Adams, the number 2 prospect in the country, out of Vienna, Georgia. He's going to take a bunch of official visits, and if Tennessee ends up with him on campus, they could certainly become a factor, as well as 5-star Auburn commit Carl Lawson. I think that there's an opportunity there for a school to come in and maybe become a big factor. He's out of the Atlanta area, and certainly we all know that when Tennessee's been up, they've hit Atlanta pretty good. So that would be a big get for them.
JC, you talked about, we're visiting with JC Shurburtt from 247 Sports, the National Recruiting Director. You've talked about Jay Graham, and I think fans are familiar with what kind of recruiter he is. Your colleague Barton Simmons at 247 Sports referred to Mark Elder, the tight ends coach, as a rising star in recruiting. And then also you have a couple of guys from the Auburn staff before, and Tommy Thigpen and Willie Martinez. John Jancic had time in Georgia, and then new wide receivers coach Zach Kazani spent time in Florida. Talk about what kind of recruiters that have those SEC ties that Tennessee has put together with this staff.
Sure. I really like Thigpen. I mean, from his days at North Carolina and then down at Auburn, I mean, he's always done an outstanding job going out, building relationships. hitting it hard. I think that as far as Barton's opinion on Elder goes, I would agree with him. And then Zach Hazzani is a guy that got kind of a bad rap at Florida because I think his position didn't perform as well or something. The fans griped or whatever, but he's got a great reputation for recruiting, and I think he'll do a tremendous job at Tennessee. And he's a guy I've always watched and followed and respected as far as recruiters go. So I think that it's an experienced staff. It's a good blend of recruiting guys and guys that can actually coach. And not to say the recruiting guys can't actually coach. I didn't mean that. But there's sometimes you go and get recruiters, and then there's sometimes you go and get X's and O's guys, and then a lot of people fall in between. But I think there's very strong coaches across the board that Butch Jones has, and certainly I look forward to seeing how they put it all together.
JC, talk about what 247 Sports is doing in terms of recruiting, the new features you guys have, and everything that's available now in this critical period. We're going into the dead period, obviously, but taking us all the way to signing day. Talk about your recruiting coverage on 247 Sports.
Sure. And our thing is we are real mobile friendly. You can get on it from your smartphone. You can kind of take it anywhere. That's not a different URL. You just go to 247sports.com. You can post on our message boards, get in our recruiting database, look at our rankings, all that. And then, we're excited about the 24/7 composite, which is it's a formula that weighs all recruiting rankings equally, including ours. So you get kind of an idea of how the recruiting industry in general evaluate your team's classes, and that's what we use for our team rankings. So we feel like we have the most accurate team rankings out there, and certainly we encourage you to go check it out.
JC, one more quick thing. We're in the dead period now. Explain that, and when does that run to? For fans that maybe hear the dead period, don't know what it means, explain to the listener what the dead period means in recruiting, what you can and can't do. Coaches
can call prospects, I believe, once a week. You get a phone call during the dead period, but prospects can't come see you on campus. You can't have contact on campus or off campus. So it is what it is. It's a dead period. And they do that, I think, partly to give prospects the holidays off so they're not badgered by it, and partly to give coaches the holidays off. And it runs through the first week in January. Sort of that first weekend is when coaches can go back out. And, there's a quiet period, which means, you can go scout them and can't talk to them, and then the contact period all the way until signing day. So I think, I think that's kind of the key. The most common misconception is that the coaches can't call during this time, and you can. You have one call per week for prospect,
and they can call the coaches whenever they want.
Absolutely.
All right, and
all the time.
What's the end date on that? The first week of January, right?
First weekend in January. Yes.
All right. Very good. JC, really appreciate your time. Thanks so much. Have a very Merry Christmas. You and your family. I always enjoy catching up with you, JC.
Hey, thanks so much, man.
Thanks. JC Shurburtt from 247 Sports.